and Audacity in 3, 2, 1, record.
Hi guys, and welcome back to the Barbell Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Christina Lynn, and I'm here with my co-host, Marissa Roy. In today's episode, we're going to be breaking down online versus in-person coaching.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this because I have actually had a couple of conversations about this recently, and it's just a niche topic. So today we're not only going to be talking to the client and the people that typically listen to this show, our clients or people who are looking for the solutions in their journey and looking to live a healthier lifestyle, but also the coaches. So really diving into kind of how we overcome barriers with online coaching, because there's tons of them, and also the pros and cons that we see with in-person coaching, because both of us have trained people in person, and we have definitely seen and experienced the pitfalls of it, but also the benefits of it. So I'm going to be reflecting back to the training days and hopefully giving not only you guys who are always regular listeners, the client, but also maybe some coaches or potential or future coaches that are interested in learning more about this. So I'm super excited to talk to hopefully a new audience too.
Yeah, I agree. And so I think, like you mentioned, I think it's really beneficial for those people who are aspiring or maybe new coaches, but also for clients who maybe haven't worked with a fitness professional. So maybe this might help clarify what they might be a little bit more drawn to, and hopefully they can find the right option for them.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good place to start is just, okay, so the difference between online and in person is obviously online coaching. You are not seeing the person. You're not actually having physical contact with them on a regular basis. Now, that online coach might be local. Like, for example, I have lots of clients that actually live in the same area as me, but it's not like we're meeting up every week to discuss their progress or something like that. It's all online. And then in person, of course, is you are meeting up with them for your workout. You have, however long your sessions are, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour, and you're getting your actual workout session in there. And then any other guidance that's provided might also be provided, online or through written documents or something like that, but it's all in person.
Yeah. So typically your in-person trainer is going to be working out of a gym, and you're going to be seeing them however many times it is in your contract. So one time a week for 30 minutes, maybe it's 2 or 3 times a week, but all of your communication typically, or I guess the main bulk of the services are going to be performed during your workout at the actual gym. And it could be in person where they're coming to your home, or you're going to a gym, but however it is, you guys are meeting up and having your sessions that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think probably the next thing to cover just for background is like the types of people that really thrive with online versus in-person coaching. So, whether that's the trainer or the client. So I'll give a personal example. I started with in-person coaching or training, and I basically graduated high school. And if you go back to episode 1, you can listen to my whole story, but basically I started personal training in the fall because I was taking a gap semester. And so I asked the gym that I was working front desk at, hey, like, if I get my certification, will you guys let me train people here? And they said, sure, like you pretty much look like you know what you're doing. You're kind of a smart kid. So sure, why not? We'll transition you over. And I trained people in person at that gym for about a year. And while I do enjoy it and it is fulfilling, as an introvert, it really, really, really drains me. And giving that much social and emotional energy per day just is like the recipe for burnout for me. And I have come very close to burnout multiple times, one of them being this semester. But that was like on another level, because me being social for multiple hours of the day, every day, was something really, really new. And so consider the type of personality that you are when you're thinking about, okay, well, maybe I want to be a personal trainer. How do I want to do that? And so what really sparked my interest, and it's funny, and we'll get into this, But what sparked my interest about online coaching was that I saw people doing it, working from home, living that hashtag girl boss life. And basically I was like, ooh, I don't have to see people face to face. I don't even have to talk. Like I could just type emails all day and sit in my PJs. That sounds like paradise. And so that's what the appeal was to me. But it's not all sunshines and rainbows. And it's actually funny because now I actually talk every day a lot more than I ever thought I would, not just on this podcast, but like to my clients, and am more involved with people than I ever thought I would be, but just in a way that actually brings me energy rather than draining me of it.
Yeah. And I think that's a really good point. And one of the things too, I would point out is if you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I'm an introvert, I don't want to do in person. That's not to say that you can't learn a lot and have and build those social skills to eventually maybe really like the position. So I think it's really good for people. And I feel again, like I'm showing my age here, but I feel like young adults or kids should be in some sort of service profession where they're doing sales or they're interacting with people. And maybe it's not for the rest of their life, but I think at some point in time, having that interaction. And while Marissa and I both do online coaching, and that is obviously where our bias is going to be, that's what we prefer. We both think it is extremely beneficial to have that in-person training experience because like Marissa said, you're going to be building those social skills, but you are also going to see what the clients are struggling with in real time and some of the things that they're giving you feedback on that you might not necessarily get in an online check-in. So I think it's really, really beneficial again, because you're able to do those client assessments. You're able to see what they struggle with, what you can give them feedback and improvement on. So I think that it's really important. And if you're starting out, I think it's a great way to gain a lot of experience very quickly.
Yeah, and that is a great point. And even though, like you said, that's our bias, we're going to be a little bit more favorable in this episode towards online coaching. And we're going to be talking about how we do that, how we overcome these barriers. But I always tell people when they ask me, how did you become an online coach? What should my first step be? I tell everyone who asks me that, go train people in person. Like, I think having that experience is invaluable because if you have, like, for example, the people that get into in-person coaching, or I'm sorry, just coaching in general, training, personal training, they are usually athletes of some sort, or they've participated in some athletic endeavor that's gotten them interested in exercise to this degree that they want to make it their living, right? And so those are the types of people that step into this space. But if you start immediately with online coaching and you've never worked with someone who's never touched a dumbbell in their life, you don't realize that when they hold a dumbbell over their head, it's shaking and wobbly, and they have no idea what they're doing with that dumbbell, and it's going to show. But you don't know that if you're working with someone online and you've never seen someone in person try to navigate that themselves. And for me, that was a huge eye opener because, like I said, I fall under that population. I was an athlete my whole life. I picked up sports. I picked up lifting weights pretty easily. Like it wasn't like an issue with motor coordination or anything. But if someone is 40, 50 years old coming into the gym for personal training for the first time in their life, like they're going to have those deficits. They're not going to be able to conceptualize mind muscle connection right off the bat. And so my advice, even though we're going to be contrasting these two, is if you are looking to get into coaching, even if it's online, get some experience working with people in person, even if it's your mom or sister or someone that you can easily get access to and start to get that hands-on experience.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And not only that, but you're going to learn more about programming. You're going to learn more about, again, how clients respond to said programming, what they're struggling with in real time, how to build rapport with clients, and how to build a connection. And you're figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And I think it's a lot easier to do it in person. And again, I think we'll talk about how typically when you're doing in-person training, you are going to be working out of a gym of some sort, that they're going to be employing you, and you have a little bit of maybe like a cushion or some sort of like you have someone that you can rely on. You'll probably have a mentor or someone who's in charge of all the trainers. And so you can go to them if you're having questions about someone. and they kind of have your back. You have a mentor. So I think that's, again, that's actually one of the pros of working in a gym, is you have someone who can kind of mentor you and help you when you're struggling.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think also let's talk and touch a little bit on the type of client that is going to thrive most in online versus in-person coaching,
Mhm.
because it's not just about the trainer's personality, it's about what kind of person is actually attracted to that. So this is for you, the listener, who is looking to hire, right? And you're looking for outside guidance on your goals. So where are you really going to benefit? And it obviously depends on your needs, because if you need in-person real-time form critique, and that's your number one priority with your training, then that's probably going to be a better avenue for you, rather than taking a bunch of videos with your phone, sending it over and getting a response the next day on the form cues you need to work on next week. And while that is helpful and beneficial, it's not in real time. It's not immediate. You're not getting that like reinforcement that really does stick. So that's one of the pros and cons. But then, if you are the type of person where maybe nutrition is your main focus, maybe like the body recomposition is your main focus, maybe you have some experience lifting or enough to know that you're not making a total fool of yourself in the gym, and you really just need the plan. You need the overall, guidance, guidelines, and everything that you need to follow, not just that 1 hour in the gym, but the other 23 hours of your life. That's where the online coaching really does come in. So I think just paying attention to what your needs are as the client, and really, like, when you're listening to these differences between online and in-person training, thinking about, okay, well, where does this fit into what I need if I'm
Mhm.
looking to hire in the future, or right now even.
Right. And I think too, to build off of that, the type of clients who typically thrive with online coaches are those who they do have some knowledge with exercise and training in general. They have a decent knowledge with nutrition, but it's not always that case. And they're highly motivated to do things on their own. They don't need to have a trainer calling them and saying, "Hey, are we going to meet on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays?" That you can show up and do the workouts on your time, that you're going to hold yourself to that level of accountability, that you're pretty self-motivated. I think that's another good thing to think about. And you also have to be motivated to send your check-ins, to do everything you need to do that your coach is asking of you, and to kind of follow their guidelines.
Yeah, and that's what attracted me to online coaching as well, was the
Mhm.
personality type of the client. I didn't want to have the people that needed someone to yell at them at all times, right?
Yeah.
To one more rep, or whatever it might be, like, or really needing someone to be there waiting for them to show up at the gym. I
Mhm.
really wanted someone, that's weird. Really waiting for someone to, I'm sorry, let me start that sentence over.
Sure.
I didn't want to have the person that needed me waiting there for them to show up at the gym the next morning. So that played into my decision in transitioning to online coaching, because you do get a little bit more of a self-motivated individual. And a lot of times their barrier is all of the crazy, stupid information in this industry that's thrown around. And really the common complaint that we get is, I I have done this before, but I'm just so confused because there's so much information. Can you please just disseminate this for me and break it down a little bit more? And
Yeah.
that's where the online coaching, you can really get into the nitty-gritty of the educational aspect and empowerment as well.
Yeah, agreed. And I don't want you guys to be listening to this and thinking like, oh, well, I'm not self-motivated, so I'm lesser of a client if I need to do in person. That's not it at all. I mean, there are some people who, I mean, you might even argue that you're even more self-motivated if you're able to go to the gym and do all of your in-person sessions, not miss anything, have that constant communication. So it's not that one is better than the other or one client is better than the other. It's just whatever is going to work best for you. And I mean, I think that if we were to summarize our podcast and all the different episodes, that's really what it comes down to, is finding out what works best for you and your lifestyle and your goals. So
Yeah.
whatever that looks like for you.
I think if we could get someone to, let's make a contest. So if you're listening to this and you go through all of our episodes and you count how many times Christina says, you have to figure out what's best for you. If you can give us that number and we can verify it later on,
I don't know how we do that.
we'll give you a prize. I will,
Yeah.
I'm going to put a bet right now. I bet it's above 50 at this point.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
At least twice an episode.
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, please no one do that. That's such a waste of time. But let's get into weighing out the differences. So we kind of touched on a couple, and we touched on getting, real-time form critique. So let's start there. And I was having a conversation actually right before we got on this recording, talking to a classmate of mine who is a wonderful in-person coach. I actually got the opportunity to meet up with a couple of my classmates a few weeks ago. We did a mock scientific trial study. And we were doing some Olympic lifting during that. And I have zero experience with that because I'm a bro and I just flex my biceps, and that's all we do. We just pick stuff up and throw it back down on the ground aggressively. But no, so in all seriousness, he was coaching me on the above knee high pull, which is a part of a power clean. And getting that real-time form critique was so helpful for me. And he was really, really good at it. And we had actually had a discussion in the past about his barriers to online coaching. And so I was actually probing him recently for just, okay, well, what are those limitations? And where do you feel the most nervous when it comes to online coaching? Because this is what we want to address. And one of those was that real-time critique. If someone says my shoulder hurts when I do this chest press, for us, we are addressing that then after the fact. My shoulder hurt when I did workout 1 on Monday when they're checking in on Friday. How do I remedy that in the future? And then my response is, oh, okay, well, do 1 set and take a video of it, send it over to me, and let me see where I can critique that. And that is the process with online coaching. It takes a little bit more time and a little bit more back and forth. And that's the way that we overcome that barrier, is with proper communication and making sure to ask for more information or a video, and then giving the proper critique there, assuming that the client had already watched the video link that I provided to the exercise and studied up on it ahead of time. But, with that in-person coaching, it's oh, set 1, my shoulder hurts. Set 2, make this adjustment a little bit better. Set 3, let's go down and weight. And boom, problem solved. Set 4, you're doing the exercise pain-free. So that's one really, really big pro for in-person coaching. So 1 point there for them, 1-0 right now on the scoreboard.
Oh God, I don't want to keep score this whole time.
I'm not going to count. I can't count for shit.
Yeah. And then again, like Marissa's saying, for online coaching, it's not that you can't address it. It's just, it doesn't come with that real time, let's address it immediately. But in both of those scenarios, you have to remember what your scope of practice is. And you are not a rehab, well, depending on what your certificates and what you're certified in, but you might need to refer out to someone who can help with this pain and help with the rehab if it gets to that point, if it's a severe injury. So that would be a good time to plug episode 7, which is the injury prevention with Nick Licamelli. So we do always recommend him if you are having some sort of pinching or pain or anything when it comes to training. But that is something that both online and in-person professionals should do, is refer out if it's something beyond their scope.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And I think that pretty much covers that. Mm-hmm. So let's get into accountability, because I think this is where we were talking about being self-motivated. And, you get the type of client where they come into online coaching and they just need the plan. They just do it all on their own. But then in reality, when we have an online client start, it doesn't always pan out that way. We don't just have 100 rock star clients who do everything on plan perfectly all the time. That's not how this works. We have clients that turn in a week of doing nothing. We have clients that turn in a week of skipping all their workouts, but maybe sticking to their diet some. And that's a very normal and real thing for us. And we're working with real people, not data sheets, even though we use data sheets. And so, the accountability aspect, honestly, it's one of the main reasons that people sign on for online coaching, is because maybe you're not getting the accountability of someone waiting for you when you walk into the gym, but you're getting the accountability of you have to check in every week and report everything you did. And, we don't just track your workouts, we track your weight over time, we track your dietary adherence every single day. I even have clients tracking their step count sometimes their water intake. And then they're telling me, okay, well, how were your stress levels? How was your hunger, your satiety, your energy levels? How was your sleep? So we're answering all those questions. And then you're turning in a training log too.
Mhm.
So it's, in my opinion, a higher level of accountability in terms of detail. But it's not the accountability where like you have to show up because you paid for this and there's someone waiting for you on the other end. So if that's the main area that you struggle is actually getting to the gym, then there's a different issue to tackle there.
Yeah. So I think you summarized that really well. And I don't think I really have anything else to add for that point.
Yeah. So accountability, it's there for both, just in different ways.
Yeah. So the next topic is kind of that social connection. And again, you're going to get a lot more of that social connection in person when you're face to face. You're meeting up with your coach and you're having that, not only are you working on, okay, give me, 10 reps of this or 10 sets or whatever, but you're able to talk in between when you're resting and you're able to have a little bit more of a conversation. You might build more of a connection than you would with an in-person, or I'm sorry, with an online trainer, because you have so much more of their time. Because I mean, if you're paying for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 60 minutes, you should have their full attention for that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't be that in-person trainer that's texting on their phone while their client's doing exercises.
Oh, I see that and it drives me nuts.
Yeah, I've seen it too. And it's really, really sad. Like there's a difference between like having your phone face out with the timer on and showing your client how much time they have left in their rest period. But like, texting and like really, I don't know. I don't know why people do it. But so to touch on the social connection, because I think this is huge. People want to be connected. And this is one of the main, I guess, concerns and critiques of online coaching that I hear all the time is why online coaching won't work is because my trainer won't get to know me. And if you're watching this or listening to this anywhere other than YouTube, I'm doing air quotes, but essentially like people are like, I don't get how this would work because it's not personal. And like, I just feel like I wouldn't get the attention that I would otherwise get in person. So I really want to talk about how we address the social connection aspect on here, because I think most people or more people have experience hiring in person versus online coaches. And this is something that I probably implemented 3 or so years ago, a video software called Loom. And essentially, it allows me to record on my own time video messages where either it's just a video of me talking or it's a video with the screen shared in the background as well. So it's kind of like when you're on Zoom, but it's recorded on your own time. You hit record. Once you're done, you hit stop. It creates an immediate link to the video that your client you can copy and paste it into the email. Your client can just click it and watch it whenever they want. It also tells you when the client watches the video, and it also allows them to comment on it or react to it. And they can also record a video reply from that video link for you. So there's a lot of versatility there. And I started using that 3 years ago, and it completely changed the way that I coached, because before that it was writing novels for my clients. And the only way they would actually hear me talk was if they watched my YouTube videos or if they watched my Instagram stories. And now we have this platform and we have a lot more, versatility in our social media diversity, but you weren't getting the one-on-one interaction quite as much. And so as an online coach, I'm actually sitting at my computer, and I make this joke with people all the time. I tell them, I'm like, hey, I think I might be a psychopath. And they're like, why? And I say, well, because I work in silence, because I don't play any music when I'm working. And they're like, wait, really? Like that sounds awful. But when I thought about it, the reason why I do that is because when I'm doing client check-ins, it's like I'll play some music, I'll open up the client's check-in, but maybe they sent me a video. So now I have to pause the music to watch the video. And then I'm taking notes on it while I'm watching. And then maybe I turn the music back on to edit their Excel, maybe I forget to. And then it's time for me to record their video. So then I spend 10 minutes recording that. And then I go and repeat that process over and over and over again. So like I just forget to turn the music back on. And all of a sudden it's been 4 hours and I've been working in dead silence.
Well, I don't work with music at all.
Yeah, it must
Maybe
be a
if
coaching
I'm,
thing.
I don't know, maybe if I'm studying or like working on my website, I might listen to a podcast or like podcast if I'm working on the website, or music if I'm, doing studying. But honestly, for the most part, no, I don't know, because I feel like you and we get in the zone with check-ins and you don't need music. I don't know.
Yeah. So essentially we're sociopaths and that's pretty much what's going on.
Come work with us. But no, I do the exact same thing. So of course, I use Loom as well. And there was such a huge difference, especially for my clients who I had been doing those novels, I had been doing those check-ins with. And then once I had switched over and started doing the videos, it was like a night and day. The clients were like, Christina, thank you so much for this. They feel like it's so much more personable. Like, even though I feel like, and I think Marissa, you're probably the same way as me. I liked doing my writing check-ins, like just my emails, because I like being very careful with how I am phrasing things, especially if you have someone who is concerned, if they're having body image issues, you want to be very careful on how you respond to them and what you're saying. And every now and then I will kind of say that, like, hey, no video response, or, I'm going to talk about this in the email so I can make sure I'm phrasing everything correctly. So it was kind of a scary jump initially going into the videos, but I feel like you can explain things way more in depth. And the other thing I thought is it was going to be more time consuming. But I have found it to be the complete opposite, that the video check-ins are so much more helpful. And if you were getting a video check-in response from a client, you get more of their personality, you can understand maybe where they're coming from better, and you're bridging that gap between something that you say in a sentence and how it may not come across the correct way. So I think that that's really good, and you build a huge connection, not just with your coach, but if you're getting those check-ins from your client, it's huge. It's like a night and day difference.
Oh yeah. And like that's how I like to phrase it is nothing is ever lost in translation in videos. And some of the feedback that I've gotten from clients who do push themselves out of their comfort zone to actually send me a video as their check-in to talk about their week, is eventually they just end up kind of rambling about their week. And then all of a sudden they've like discussed all their problems, but then they come up with a solution while they're talking about it. And they're like, well, I guess you were just a sounding board for that one because I figured it out. And it's just so funny. And so it's a reflective tool on the part of the client, as well as, those little details that maybe they wouldn't type out because maybe they're being careful with typing out their check-in. Now they're being more productive with their time by talking through it and maybe letting those little things. So sometimes I'll be like, I noticed you said this, can you explain more about that? And then it opens up this whole nother door, this whole other conversation of things that maybe we wouldn't have even considered talking about, that answers a question or a problem and creates a solution that we would have never otherwise considered. So video responses, one way or the other, have been an absolute game changer. And I know this is industry wide. This is pretty much the standard of online coaching now. So you should usually expect that from someone who's doing online coaching, because it's pretty commonplace now.
Yeah, agreed. And so the other aspect we've talked about is, again, that social connection versus for in-person versus online. But the other factor that you are thinking about now is that gym environment. And so sometimes you have clients who are a little bit intimidated to go into a gym and to work out with a trainer. They don't like feeling that kind of spotlight or maybe pressure from being in that situation. So they prefer doing things either in their garage gym, home gym, or just doing things on a different pace where you're on your own. So sometimes that is a factor that I've seen where clients just don't like that in-person factor.
Yeah. And then the last thing too, because we kind of rambled about social connection for online, but not for in-person,
Yeah.
is, you can basically end up as your client's therapist either way.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I have noticed that for both modes of coaching that I have done. Basically, you can get to know the person as much as you allow that relationship to grow. The videos really do harness that, as well as like monthly calls. I know Christina and I both do that. So our clients have the option to book a monthly call that is live on Zoom. And so even if someone is across the country, you're still able to get that face-to-face and immediate reaction to each other. But overall, the video much more similar to being in person, because you can have the empathy, you can hear tone, you can basically understand someone's emotions behind something, and you as a coach come off as more understanding, more empathetic because of that, basically those communication skills. And I've learned a lot from being basically forcing myself to record videos every single day. My people skills have increased dramatically, and I'm not a people person. And like, if you know me, then you know that I'm actually pretty socially awkward, but I don't come across that way on social media or on the podcast most of the time. I know Christina's like rolling her eyes right now, but most of the
Can
time,
confirm, very awkward.
most of the time, because I have practiced so much.
Yeah. And one of the things that you just made me think of, and this was a topic that we were going to touch on earlier, but I think it's a good time to implement right now, is with online coaching, there can be a little bit of those blurred lines between what communication is professional, what is personal, how do you set those boundaries? Because I think as coaches, we have we're more likely to say, okay, you have 24/7 access to me. You can text me, you can message me on this app, you can DM me on Instagram. We have the Facebook group. And I think that there's more of that, again, those blurred lines with the online versus in person, because with in person, it's more like, all right, see you Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and those are our times. And if you have questions, you bring them to your next session. And so I think it's a little more clear cut. So it is extremely important as a coach to set boundaries and what is acceptable levels of communication and what is not, because it can be really easy to answer, and I get it. Like, we're coaches because we want to help. We want to help our clients. And so if they shoot us a message at 10 p.m. on a Friday night, like, oh my gosh, I just binged, what do I do? We want to help. But if you start to set that precedent that you're going to respond to all messages at any hour, at any time of day within, 10 minutes, well, then the next time your client texts you and you take 30 minutes, or maybe you take a couple hours to respond, they're going to be upset because you have now let down their expectations. So it can be really, really difficult. And you need to sit down and think, what is acceptable and what is not for me, and make sure you communicate that to your clients.
Yes. And with full transparency, this is something that I still struggle with, because I do have that like just helping heart when it comes to like getting form videos, for example. I don't want my clients to go through the trouble of like uploading it on Google Drive and then sharing the folder. Oh, the folder's private. Can you share it again? Whatever. Like, that is so annoying. So I just say, hey, text it to me. The expectation that I have now set, which honestly is a recent one, and like, I'm worse about this than I ever want to admit, but the expectation that I have been trying to set and have been good about, at least this semester, is if you send me a message, you can send me a message at any time. My phone is always on silent. I literally never have it on sound, except for some reason when it rang literally 10 minutes ago. But
that's when it mattered.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I don't know why that happened, but essentially it's always on silent. So if you text me at 2 a.m, I'm not going to wake up. So don't apologize. Like, I won't get it. But you can text me at any time, but my response is going to be within work hours. So it's going to be between like 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. most days. And otherwise I'm not going to respond. And so as a coach, that makes a lot of sense for me, because then when I'm at my desk, I can respond to texts, emails, whatever. But also, then I fell into the habit of forgetting to respond because I just left it read, and then it just falls farther and farther down the list. So here's a tip for anyone who is kind of working with that. If you're an Apple user and you have an iPhone, you can pin conversations up now. So if you press and hold on the name of the person, or you swipe, if it's in the box, if you swipe right, it'll come up with this little yellow pin icon and you can pin it to the top. So basically what I do now is anytime I have something that I'm going to respond to later, I pin it up, and then it's staring at me and I know I have to get to it at during my work hours. And then I knock all my pins out, and then I make sure I respond to everybody. And that system works really well for me. So like you could leave it, mark it as unread if you're using like Facebook Messenger, or if you have an Android, I'm sure there's something you can do there with that, but that's a really good system that's worked for me.
And a boundary that I have that's different than Marissa is I don't give my phone number out to clients. That's just a personal preference, safety thing. And I think, again, it just blurs between professional and personal. So that's just something that I don't do. But again, same thing as far as form corrections. It's like, hey, send me a DM and I'll get back to them. And again, I'm trying to be a lot more. I'm trying to be a lot better about responding during normal business hours. And now I'm sending out contracts, and my contracts explicitly say when my business hours are, and that it's just kind of like that reasonable, like if you were to respond to maybe your a teacher, well, they shouldn't be responding to you after hours. It should be during that school setting. And again, I think I've talked about this before, but as a counselor, that is something that I have learned in grad school, and it's something that I take to heart as even as a online coach. But I don't want to set the precedent that I'm responding to emails or text messages or messages at any time, all times, because I don't want, like I mentioned before, the one client to send something, they don't get a response and they get upset.
Yeah.
So I think that's just really important. And as a coach, to think about what is, again, acceptable, what works best for you, what's acceptable for you, and what's not. And I think that sometimes we can get a little carried away if we have like one or two clients. It can, you maybe want to have a lot more communication with them because you don't have as many clients. But the more clients that you get, the harder it is to juggle all that. So having, again, rules, boundaries can make it a lot better on you, so you don't have a mental breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's very important from the get-go, which unfortunately I have learned through trial and error over the years. But it's something that you can always be better at. And, like you said, giving your phone number out, that's a personal preference. You can use other modes of communication. You can get a specific app that you can talk to clients on, like tons of options. Just make sure that you set it up and set the expectation ahead of time and upfront, and then don't deviate from that.
Yeah.
I think that this is a really good segue into talking about processes with onboarding and systems. So I want to jump into that, even though it wasn't next on our list.
No, I think that's a good one to touch on right now.
Yeah, because we're talking about setting boundaries, setting systems up. So this was one that the same guy I mentioned, who's a really great in-person coach, mentioned he has a lot of, I guess, questions and hesitations and fears about that, because it's like he feels like and I will quote, is starting from scratch every time he sets up processes with a new client online, because he just doesn't have anything to go off of. And so it's really important to have templates and things in place that essentially guide the client through the beginning processes, so that they're not just totally lost and asking a billion questions. Because what can be the most overwhelming thing in the world, and awful for both the client and the coach, and super, super messy online, is saying, all right, you sent your payment in, let's get started. And the client says, what do I do? And the coach goes, let's start with this. And like, there's no guidance, or there's nothing, like there's no materials, nothing to read through. So I think it would be a really good idea to give our audience a good idea of what our systems look like. So like when we onboard a client from step one to, maybe the end of their first week, what does that actually look like? So they're going to be really similar. We joke about this all the time. Our coaching methods are literally the same. So Christina, do you want to start off?
Yeah. So again, like Marissa was saying, the more structure that you have set in place makes it a lot easier. And pretty much every single client should have the exact same process. And of course, people are going to need a few tweaks here and there, but generally you should have a application or some sort of intake method, and you read through those applications and you set up maybe it's a time to call, or sometimes it's done through email, whichever you prefer. Marissa and I like to do consultation calls, and from there the person says, yes, I want to move forward. From there it's like, okay, awesome, here is an email. And so the email, again, we have a template, and it's everything that client needs to do step by step by step. So they might have a few questions, but it's going to be way, way, way less than if you just didn't have anything, or if you, oh shoot, I left this out, or I forgot to include this. So it's like, step one, like, here is how you submit payment. This is what we agreed upon. Here's your monthly rate, or here's what it is paid in full. Number two, you're going to get a contract. It's going to be sent through Adobe Sign. You'll get that in a separate email. Go ahead and sign that. Number three, here's your new client questionnaire. This is everything I need to know to get to know you, and how to go about setting up your programming and your macros. Here is the welcome packet. This includes everything you need to know about my philosophies, training, how to fill out your Excel sheet, everything. Here's links, here's this. And it's set up in a way that it's very easy to navigate and understand. And so at the very end, it's like, hey, let me know if you have any questions, or let me know that you finished reading this. I don't know if I'm leaving anything out. And then the other thing that I do is I used to, and this would actually take a lot of time, and it was silly, but I would have clients send me their Facebook name, and I would friend them and then add them to my Facebook group. But it took me way too much time because I'm trying to figure out who, where they're located, what their name. And so now I just go, here is my link. Add me as a friend. I will add you to the Facebook group. And it was something so simple, but cut down on so much time. Here's the Instagram page. Make sure you're following this. Once I have payment, once I have your signed contract, once I have your questionnaire, you will get everything. You'll get your plan within, 24 to 48 hours. And that's pretty much it. In the meantime, if you have any questions or concerns, let me know. So that is my onboarding process. It's pretty streamlined, and I don't feel like it takes me a lot of time. And it's pretty easy. And I mean, that's not how it was in the beginning. In the beginning, it was just kind of like, I don't know what to do, and every client was different. But having those processes is so nice. You spend so much less time. And again, like Marissa was saying, it's not as much questioning and back and forth. But that's not to say that you won't have that initial kind of like learning curve in the beginning where the client is still kind of figuring things out and getting into a groove. So that's to be like expected.
I will say the learning curve is so much less steep with this onboarding process though. So, I mean, mine's pretty much the same. I wanted to give you guys a better idea of what types of things are included in the onboarding process. So I actually just pulled up my protocol packet, which is essentially what people get once they submit their payment. Everything leading up to that was exactly the same as Christina described, but it has more about me, about mindset, about nutrition, our methodology. And then I go through, okay, well, our first week is going to be a data collection week where you collect data on your diet for me. So I walk the client through in that packet exactly how to do that. And so there's already instructions built in. It's all there. They have the resources, they have the videos to learn how to track their macros, how to plug things in, how to search for certain things, how to log everything into their Excel document, exactly what is required for their check-ins and their first check-in, how to take progress pictures, how to take measurements, how to download Loom, like we talked about, to record videos, how to log in their workouts, and then other resources. And then our contact policy is in there. So like, I'm only going to respond during work hours. That's written in there. Code of ethics and a bunch of legal stuff that like I barely understand, but I had a lawyer write for me. And so those are all the things that like usually people would have a lot of questions about. Oh, how do I check in? What do I send in my check-in? Like all of the frequently asked questions basically compiled into one packet, and that solves all the problems. I have to say, I haven't had a client actually have follow-up questions from the onboarding packet in like, I can't even remember. Like, I don't think I've had a single one. And I've had multiple clients say how impressed they were with how streamlined the onboarding process was. So, I mean, just talk about taking a load off your own plate. Like that is
Yeah.
so much work that you don't have to do if you get that set up.
Having a welcome packet is so helpful. And again, I actually just revamped mine and I was going through my old one and it was so ugly. The information was spot on and I really didn't change a whole lot, but it was also just some, more information on like how do you go ahead and schedule your monthly calls with me? Again, the contact policy, all those things. And it was funny because I had just onboarded 2 new clients, but I was in the process of updating the welcome packet. So I didn't want to give them my old one because I knew how ugly it was. And I didn't want them to have to read through it a second time with the additional information. So I let them know ahead of time, like, hey, this is normally what you get from me. However, it's going to be a couple days delayed. And so they were like, okay. But I started to get questions like, what if I want to eat ice cream? What if I want to do this? What if I want to do that? And then I sent them the welcome packet and her response back to me was like, never mind, you answered everything.
Yep.
So yeah, that was really helpful. And the other thing that I've done is it's once you have your systems in place, it doesn't mean that it's 100% perfect and you can't change anything in the future. So one of the feedback I got from me is I had a client recently who just doesn't like technology, and there was a disconnect because she had a Mac and I had a PC, and so she didn't have Office 365. So one of the things that I actually have done now is I used to have my intake form just as a Word document, but I've now embedded it into my website so they can fill it out online, and then I get notified immediately once they've filled it out. So they don't have to send it to me in an email. So I've kind of streamlined that. And same thing with my check-in form. Is some of my clients, even though it had it in the welcome packet, this is all the information I want to know, they sometimes wouldn't include that. So now I have a form. So it's, again, what are your stress levels? What was on a scale of 1 to 10? How was this? How was that? And then it's all the questions I want. And they don't have anything that they need to respond, they don't include it, but it's more of a template and an outline for them to go by. So you can play around with things. If it doesn't work, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. You can change it up and figure out what works best for you and your clients.
Caught red-handed. Yeah, but I think it's really important on the theme of protecting your own energy. The intake form on the website. So I did that as well a while back, and my intake form is not short. If you go to my website, like it's really long, and it's long on purpose because that's a weed out process in and of itself. Because I used to get messages on my form on my website because it said name, email, message, send, and that was it. And so I'd get inquiries all the time that were like, hi, help me lose weight. And that was it. And then I'd follow up, and then we'd have a really like unproductive discussion, and that was it. And they didn't sign on. And so by forcing someone to put in all the effort to fill out like 20 different questions or more, like that shows that they're committed and interested and they're actually ready to sign on. And so that was a weed out process for me to protect my own energy. So I wasn't jumping on the phone with just any random person who said, oh, I need to lose weight. And I also put my prices out there, which we're about to get into talking about prices, but I just put them on my website because that's another weed out process. Is like, if someone can't afford it, then I don't waste 30 minutes on the phone with them and then tell them the prices and have them say, oh, well, I can't afford that. This was a total waste of time. Like, then, where did that energy just go? I just wasted 30 minutes of my day and yours, and now no one's happy because no one's getting paid and no one's getting help. So that can really protect your energy as well, getting your systems in line. Before we move on, though, to talk about onboarding in person. So the benefits of that is you're usually under a gym. There's usually a system in place already, and you're usually, taking someone in, they've done the intake form, they've signed up for a gym membership, they've bought a certain package with the sales reps or whatever, and either you've poached them off the floor or they've already bought their packages, depending on how the gym operates. And then you have certain assessments that you go through in training or shadowing, where you have to actually assess the client's movement, you have to ask them certain questions, and so there's already a system in place for that. So that's not something that you really have to worry about. However, when it comes to the stuff like nutrition and lifestyle that we really do put a greater focus on with online coaching, it's those questions like, what if I want to eat ice cream? Or, is diet soda bad for you? Or, how do I know if I'm eating too many carbs? Like, those types of questions, they just get answered on the fly whenever it pops into the client's head, if they so choose to then act on it and ask that question. So there's a lot of stuff that can be left unanswered if you're not putting in the time to have some kind of onboarding process, packet, etc. And then the other thing that I really was thinking about earlier today when we talked about doing this episode was when you're trying to be an in-person trainer and then start an online business, because that's how a lot of them transition over, and you're giving an hour's worth of social and emotional energy to each client for multiple hours of the day. And then you want to start adding on, okay, so maybe I train someone for an hour, they get the workout aspect, cool. But if I want to write the rest of their programming, or if I want to help them with their nutrition, and that's included in the cost of the sessions that they bought, so I'm not getting paid extra. Now I'm doing 2 to 3 times the amount of work to give them the online materials and burning out my social and emotional energy, and now spending my free time doing all this extra stuff. It's not sustainable to do that. And in all reality, like, making that transition is really hard, because you might be spending twice the amount of energy, time, and sacrificing time on your end as a trainer, trying to do both. Because like, if you really want to be comprehensive and help someone, if someone's really looking for that change in their life, they're not just going to you 2 times a week for strength training. They're changing a lot of other variables in their life. So, how much does it cost you? What is the cost to benefit analysis to you as a trainer? And how does that contribute to burnout in the long term? So that's something to really consider as well. And that's kind of a pro towards online coaching, because it's like, we set our prices, the time we spend programming and writing plans is all included in that. And, we're not additionally physically putting in hours on top of that.
Yeah. So one of the things I'll say to kind of build off of that before we jump into prices is, when you're working in a gym, like we mentioned before, typically they have their systems already set in place. And so you actually might get a client who's already been onboarded. And so you don't have to worry about any of that, because they've already met with someone. And by the time they get to you, they're ready to go, and they're ready just to get their programs written. And of course, that questionnaire and figuring out what they need, what they don't need, how to modify their program. But that sometimes is a benefit. And building off of that, when you are a online coach, you are generating your own leads. So there might be time where you are spending less time with your actual clients and you're working on lead generation. You're working on content that's going to bring clients to you. Typically, when you're at a gym, you have someone who walks in the door and it's a lot easier, or you have someone who's already spoken to someone and you get a client who's ready to go. So there are a lot of pros and cons when it comes to it. So I think it's just figuring out what your environment you're going to work best in.
What works best for you, or maybe where you want to allocate your energy is a better way to put that.
Yeah.
Because we do spend a lot of time creating content. For example, we sit down for an hour a week to record this for you guys, and it does in turn help our coaching businesses, for the people that invest in the podcast, and eventually maybe they invest in us. And so, we are putting energy into this, we're putting energy into Instagram content, into showing up on social media, because that's how we generate those leads. And I think that's a really, really good point for sure. One thing I also thought of was a client that I actually had a call with today, who is basically doing full service, like nutrition, training, lifestyle, with a gym that they go to. And basically, and I don't really love doing this either, because it's like, I always preach that you should just listen to one person's advice and stick with it, and not try to take advice from multiple people. But he was incredibly frustrated, because he had been at something for 6 months and had seen zero progress. And so he finally got fed up and said, you know what, I'm booking this call with you. Let's do a one-time consultation. Can you break down this information that they've been giving me? Tell me why it's wrong, or at least point me in the right direction. So he sent me all the documents. And what it really opened my eyes to was, the organization of, and like, this is going to be an ego stroke for myself, like the organization of my templates and processes, and how the Excel sheets look, and how you're able to actually see change over time on them. Because the Excel sheets that they were providing this guy were just really messy. And it just kind of goes to show what I was saying about if they're in-person trainers and they're trying to do this on top of that hour they're spending with you in the gym, they don't have a lot of time or energy to devote to that. So a lot of times it does take a full paradigm shift of like, okay, I'm really going to go, in person only, or I'm really going to do online only, and really specialize in what you're trying to do, because you only have so much energy, and it's really, really hard to do both at all times. And that's really the recipe to burn out. And so that really opened my eyes to that today. And I was able to help that guy out a lot. But just interesting to see that perspective when I opened up those sheets.
I have a similar story where I had a client, and when I was doing in person, I was working out of a tennis club, ironically, and they did have a personal training facility. And I had to adhere to their training philosophies, and I did not agree with them, but it was something that I had to do as an employee of that facility. So I had a client who had been going there for years, had been doing this training because she didn't know anything different. Once I got a job as a school counselor, I was not able to dedicate my time at the facility. I had to leave. I had a couple clients who said, "Oh, well, I want to continue working with you. How do I continue to do that?" And that's how I started to getting into online training. Is it was like a little bit of both. It was we'd meet up for in-person workouts, but I'd still be doing a lot of things for them online. But I had a client who had worked for the facility, came over with me, and now I had freedom to do whatever I wanted with her program, train her how I wanted to train. And one of the things she said to me was, "I can't believe how much time and energy and money I've wasted for 2 years doing this training, and then to see 2 months of progress with you and how big of a difference it is." So while there can be a lot of good things that happen from working out of a gym and having a lot of things streamlined for you, having that mentor, you are still under their guidelines and rules and expectations they have for you as an employee.
Yeah, I think that really just comes down to the culture of the gym, the
Mhm.
management, who's running the place, what are the methodologies. Like if you have a whole gym that's like, and this goes for coaching businesses in general. And we were actually talking about this on a webinar that I was on last night. But basically, it's always a better idea to center yourself and your business around what is best for the client, rather than building your model on a method. So for example, the keto guy, and we talked about this with one of our guests, multiple guests probably, the glute guy, or you are centered around this method of like, I coach people using intermittent fasting. I coach people using, for example, F45. That's a method. That's a type of training, like circuit training, or I'm not exactly sure what they do, but they're 45-minute workouts, right? And so that's a method. Orange Theory is a method, and that's how they program. And so you can't get out of that framework without breaking kind of the culture of that company now. But if you center your coaching business around doing what's best for the client, then we're able to be adaptable. So the client comes in saying, "Oh, well, I've done this for so long. I'm looking to see better results in this way. Can you help me do that?" Sure. We try low carb, doesn't work. Let's try high carb. We try this type of training with low rest periods, doesn't work. Let's try longer rest periods and heavier load. Like basically being able to be adaptable is, I guess, that's more so a perk of being your own boss, of just being able to actually change your methodology, but also not, dying on a hill for a certain method. And I think sometimes gyms specifically can really get themselves trapped in that, especially if they're like a specialty gym or a studio gym, and they have this one way that they train all their clients, they teach all their trainers to train clients. If you catch yourself not aligning with that, or it's just not working for you, you're kind of stuck in, however long you've chosen to sign on for, versus a client-centered approach. So definitely a really great point there.
Yeah. So we were going to talk about price differences, and we went off on a little bit of a tangent. Should we wrap up the limitations of working corporate for yourself? Because I feel like we just
Oh,
hit on a lot of those.
yeah, I didn't even see that on the outline actually. So yeah, we could definitely do that.
Right. So again, so one of the things we talked about is you as working at a gym, you typically get leads that come in to you, or you get clients that have already signed up and you have been assigned their trainer. You have the onboarding process that is typically already set up. You already have all these documents that you need to use. So you have this template, everything is easy. You have a mentor. Depending on if you're working full time, you might have benefits, you might have healthcare. I don't really know because it's been a while since I've worked in a gym. If you have any sort of retirement, I probably don't. Um,
I don't
but
remember.
you also have a salary, and that is a lot easier. And sometimes you can have your shifts covered and you might still get a portion of the money because they are your client. It just depends on what your policy is at your gym. But most of the times, what happens is if you have a client cancel or if you are out sick, then you do not make money on those days because you don't have any clients to see and you can't be at the gym. So those are some of the pros and cons of working in a gym.
Yeah, and this really frames something that I talk about a lot is the concept of job security. So you might say, oh, well, I want to work for someone because I want a steady flow of clients coming in and I want that job security. So my argument with that is my perception of job security has changed so much because ultimately, if you work under someone, there is always a chance that you could get fired at any moment for whatever reason. Maybe someone frames you for a scandal. Maybe you actually do something wrong, but you could get fired at any point,
Mhm.
right? Or maybe the gym's just doing layoffs, right? And they just need to get rid of people because of COVID, for example.
That happened to
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. So, there is always that risk. When you're your own boss, sure, yeah, you might have months that are higher and lower in your relative income, but ultimately what I've learned is it's really up to me. Do I show up on Instagram? Do I show up for the podcast? Am I putting out content that allows people to build a relationship with me and trust me? If I am doing that, then client inquiries come. If I am serving my current clients, then they make referrals. If I am not doing those things, I don't have job security because I'm not delivering and I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And
Right.
that's ultimately the greatest job security in my opinion, because I'm generating my own income by the amount of effort I put in. It sucks in a way because you always have to be trying. And, if you take time off, you have to acknowledge that there's consequences to that. And I have done that in the past. I've gotten lazy and I've been like, well, yeah, I can live off of this amount. I can just let this kind of ride. And I've had other periods where, I push and I have really successful months, but it really is like direct to the amount of effort that you put in. And that's something that has really busted the myth of job security for me, other than like benefits. But like, cool, I started my retirement account last year and now we're rolling. So
You're welcome.
yeah, I've definitely been talking to Christina about that. But so that's kind of my perspective. And I always like to talk about that with people because job security is such a big concern for so many people. And that's, not to bash the corporate workplace at all, because most of the time it is pretty secure if you do what you're supposed to do and prove yourself valuable. But if like transitioning out is something that you really want to do and work for yourself, it really does come down to the effort that you put in.
Yeah, and I think that, and we were supposed to at the very beginning of this episode talk about the misconceptions of online coaching and online training, but I think people have a very traditional idea of what a job is, what a career is, and having some sort of job that relies on the internet can be kind of scary to some people. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people out there who will have parents or grandparents who are like, well, when are you going to get a real job? Or, how, I don't know. They don't think that what you're doing is real. So it can be really hard to kind of, I don't know, pave your way or to prove to other people that what you're doing is an actual job. And I mean, I know that firsthand because that's something that I currently deal with and it's frustrating. But again, like Marissa said, it's up to you that you are on your own boss and you can prove to yourself and to your clients that you are making a difference and what you're doing is is a career.
Yeah. I mean, I still deal with that 5 years in because I'm in
Mhm.
my master's now. So people ask me what I'm going to do when I'm done with my master's. And I just
Mhm.
look at them like, I've been doing it. What kind of a question is that? But, people don't get it. It's becoming more conventional now that everything did have to shut down and everything did have to transition online for a while. So it's much more commonplace now. But I mean, even still, like I have people asking me, like, what are you going to do when you get your master's? The master's was really just to supplement my current career that I already have. But
You're like,
thank you.
I literally have a business. I have an LLC. I pay taxes.
I pay a lot of taxes.
Yeah.
Con
Yeah.
of owning your own business.
Yeah. So I know that we were going to talk about prices, but I think another thing that really feeds off into the limitations is the idea of scheduling and convenience for, again, the coach and client. So if you're working out of a gym, you are working around their gym hours, and those are the only time that you can see clients. And again, like we spoke about before, whether you were meeting with a client for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, or an hour, you were confined to that time limit. So if you are working 8 hours and you sell 1 hour packages, you can only see at max 8 clients a day. And that can be very limiting because there's no way that you can see more clients unless you start doing 30-minute packages. And those might be a little bit more expensive, but then you need to make sure that you're filling those. The other thing that a lot of in-person trainers will do is they will start to see clients in a group setting. So that way you're able to see not just one client, but you're able to see multiple. That is a little bit of a con because you're not getting as one-on-one private coaching because you're sharing that time with other clients. But that is one way that you can kind of increase your, I guess, coaching methods. And then there are trainers who do group classes. So they do those group Zumba or yoga or whatever it is that they're doing, or circuit training, but you're confined to those hours. And same thing with the clients is, maybe you have someone who works um, night shifts, or you have someone who needs to come in at 3 in the morning because that's the only time that they can get their workout in. But if the gym's not open, then you're not going to work out with that client. So it's really nice and convenient for online where you can send your workouts to your client and they do them at any time that works best for them, whether it's 3 in the morning, 11 o'clock at night, whatever works. And same thing with check-ins, that you figure out a time like, hey, let's check in on this day between these hours. And you're trying to figure that out with the client.
Yeah, yeah, and that actually segues pretty nicely into talking about prices as well. But yeah, I mean, and you can service more people at once with online coaching. You can have 10, 12, 15, 20 people check in a day if you so want to.
Mhm.
And some coaches that I know stack all their check-ins on like Mondays and Tuesdays, and then they work on content the other days of the week, or they just have a long weekend. And like it really does, come down to how do you want to distribute your time. I'll be totally honest. Like when I was working in person, I was 18 years old and my previous wage was like 850 or something for the front desk. And I had never had a job before. Like, so I was like, cool, I'm making money. And then it basically just doubled when I started personal training. But that's a third, I think, of what the people were actually paying at the gym for the service. So like I was making what, $15, $16 an hour for an hour's worth of time and energy towards someone. And again, limited to those hours, limited to the number of people that I could take on at once. While subjecting myself to burnout if I wanted to max out those hours, right? And so it is kind of a limiting structure. But if you're able to say work in person at a studio gym, charge your own rate, or get a higher percentage of that rate, that would probably be more lucrative. But to quickly talk about price differences, so the industry standard for online coaching right now is $250 to $500 per month. And so typically it's paid monthly, and you can set it up where you pay monthly or you pay in full. But essentially it's $250 to $500 per month. And you're basically getting everything within that. And so I think this is a good kind of segue to go from talking about scheduling and convenience for coach and client to pricing. So kind of moving into that. And, you're getting everything. You're getting nutrition, you're getting basically your workouts, you're getting one-on-one guidance, you're getting everything under that price umbrella per month. And when you really break that down, if you're thinking about, okay, how much is each in-person training session? I know at the gym I was working at, it was on the cheaper side. It was like $45, $50 if you bought a big package, going up to about $60 if you bought a smaller package. But other gyms, one personal training session can be $120. And at a studio gym, one in-person training session can be, $150. And then, you're doing that twice a week for a month. That's 8 sessions at, $100 plus. That's over $800 per month. And you're, again, limited to that hour. Do you have contact with your trainer outside of the gym? Do you text them? Do you email them? Maybe, but that's not a guarantee. And so really how much you're able to make, there is a really big difference depending on what gym you're at and how that's all structured. So, if you're charging $250 to $500 per month to spend, a few hours worth of time on those check-ins and calls and video responses, in my opinion, it's a lot more efficient use of time for, I guess, bang for your buck.
Yeah, I agree. And I think the other thing too is at gyms, it might depend on if you're getting a trainer, if you're getting a head trainer, or you're getting someone who it has a lot more experience. And so you're paying for that level of experience, you're paying for the level of expertise. And it's kind of the same thing for online coaches as well, as you're paying for their education, their certifications, and what they have to offer you. And so the more in demand a coach is and the more that they have to offer their clients, typically the higher their prices are going to be. And so there are a lot of different methods for online coaching. And so you have kind of what's considered the high ticket coaches, and they might only have a handful of clients. So they may work with maybe like 5 to 10, but they're charging a couple, $1,000 maybe a month for that coaching, and they might be a lot more hands-on. And that's great for a trainer, because you can say, well, I only have to work with a couple clients and I hit my income levels for the month. But if you have a client drop off, well, you significantly reduce your income for that month. And so those clients almost have not power over you, but you might have a little bit more of that, like that you need the client to survive. And then there are the clients or the coaches who do very, very low kind of cheap entryway. So they might do like a monthly subscription. And so you pay 1 to 5, maybe 10, $20 a month, and you have access to a website, you have access to an app. So you don't have any direct contact with this coach, but you have these programs, and you need, or you write programs yourself and you sell these programs and they're 20, $50 or something like that. But you have to rely on a lot of clients in order to make money to survive each month. So a lot of people fall into that middle ground. And so they take those one-on-one clients and they're not charging an arm and a leg, but they're also not charging $20. And so industry standard, and I had to run to the bathroom, so I don't know if Marissa touched on this.
I did.
Okay, yeah. So the industry standard is like $200 to $600, maybe even $800 at the very, very top level. But it's right around that. And so figuring out what you need to start at. Obviously, if you're not an experienced coach, you probably shouldn't be charging $800 a month, but you also shouldn't be charging, $50 either. So trying to find where you think your level of expertise is as a coach.
Yeah. And I actually said 250 to 500 as the industry standard, but like pretty similar. And like, there are people that definitely charge more than that.
I guess I'm thinking like prep coaches and things like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. But I guess like in general, if you're a lifestyle client looking for something right now, that's probably more the range you'll see. Mm-hmm. I've had to learn this the hard way, and I definitely fall under more of like a high volume coach where I have a lot more clients. But essentially I've had to raise my prices more and more over time because, well, one, I push myself too because I know it's worth that, and I'm making real change in people's lives, and it's actually worth more money per unit of time. And it's been really hard for me to do that, to value myself as much as I should, but also because there have been points where the demand has been so high at my current prices that I had to raise them to basically weed people out. And so that's kind of where I'm at now. And I'm actually at a place now where I feel good about those prices, and just making sure that I can still over deliver and really change lives, and not have anyone walking away thinking, oh, I wasted this amount of money, this large sum of money, but also making sure it's high enough that it can pay my bills too.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And I think for me, sometimes and most coaches, we want to work with as many people as possible just
Yeah.
because we want to help all of those people change those lives. But we can fall into that trap of taking on way too many clients, burning ourselves out and spreading ourselves thin. And so
Yeah.
it
Even
is,
with online.
yes, even with online. And I think too that just because you set your prices doesn't mean that you can't raise them in the future. And when you should raise those prices are up to you. But typically it's with the more experience, the more education you have, the more that you offer your clients. And like, so Marissa and I, we implement those monthly calls, and that's something that we never used to do. But if you have 30 to 40 clients and you're offering 30 to 40 monthly calls, that can add up quite a bit. And so there are
Mhm.
times where you do need to raise your prices. So it's just because you have your price now doesn't mean you can't change it in the future. And again, a lot of it depends on supply and demand as well.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So I think, this kind of turned into a little bit of a conversation of how to coach, even though
Yeah.
we didn't intend to do that. But when it comes to talking about the differences and misconceptions between online and in-person coaching, a lot of people are familiar with how training in person kind of works. And to discussing how we get over those barriers of communication, personability, that's not a word, being personal with your client on video. This is
Personable.
personable. Oh my God, this is me being socially awkward. Um, but being more personable with the client, and really overcoming the barriers of, okay, well, how do we discuss exercise form, and how do we make sure that you're not hurting yourself in the gym? How do we make sure that we're actually keeping accountable? All of those things. I think it's important that we kind of give you guys an inside look or a sneak peek into how we coach. Otherwise, we're not really addressing, like, okay, well, how can we overcome these barriers and provide benefit to the client with either method? So I think we did a really good job of that. And it's actually funny because we've been talking about doing an episode on like how to coach online for others, and sort of, again, for this niche audience of coaches that we do have. It's definitely not the majority of our audience, but I think people find it really interesting, and the coaches that are listening will definitely benefit from it. So that episode will come in due time, probably sooner rather than later. But I like that this episode kind of turned into a little sneak peek of that.
Yeah. And so if you are a aspiring or beginning coach and you have questions, if there's something that you need us to clarify, we can definitely do an episode if you want to shoot us over some questions in the DM, or, whatever method we have to contact us. Um, so one of the things that we wanted to do was just kind of wrap up and do a quick summary of the pros and cons of in-person and the pros and cons of online. So again, in-person pros, you have that real-time form correction, exercise modification. You have that accountability. You're showing up for those sessions in the gym. You have that social benefit, that connection, and face-to-face interaction with your coach and client. Gyms might give you some sort of benefit for healthcare, onboarding, getting those client leads. You have, again, the leads that are coming into the gyms that you work out. Cons, it might be expensive per session. Scheduling issues can come up, like if your client cancels sick days and you're confined to those time limit for those limited sessions. There's little to no emphasis on nutrition. You're not able to see as many clients throughout the day. You have to conform to gym policies and training philosophies. You're limited to location. So you have to work with those clients who can only make it to the gym rather than being able to have clients from all over the world. And you can lead to higher trainer burnout with your using all that emotional social energy. And if you're trying to provide that nutrition benefit, it's 2 times the level of commitment. So online pros are flexible scheduling, get to set your own hours. Clients can check in on your schedule, and clients work out when they fit into their schedule. You can work from wherever you want as long as you have Wi-Fi. It's affordable, and it's more contact between the coach and client, because you can touch on all aspects of progress. There's that emphasis on nutrition. You can talk to you can take your coaching however you see fit. So you can do one-on-one, group, you can have an app, you can have programs, you can have a monthly membership on a website, you can have self-guided courses, remote personal training. It's more private, more intimate between you and that client. And you can work with anyone who has internet access. The cons are there is that no in-person contact. You have to generate your own leads. There's no healthcare, no benefits. You are working 100% for yourself unless you are an assistant coach. But I guess that's something that we did not touch on.
That'll be for the how to coach growing a
Yeah.
coaching business episode.
Yes. There is no accountability. So you don't have a boss who's telling you what to do, when to do, how to show up. So you were in charge of yourself. It may be less motivating for some clients, and you might have equipment limitations. You might have clients who don't have any gym that they're working out of. So that's kind of just a quick little summary and wrap up of everything we talked about. I don't think I touched on absolutely everything we went into, because we went on quite a bit of tangents, but yeah.
Yeah, I think just to close out too, as we said at the beginning, know the type of person that you are and what your needs are when it comes to hiring. So if you're looking for a trainer, you want to know basically what you need to focus on. Is it the nutrition? Is it the accountability in all aspects of your life? Do you need a better eye on basically how to be adherent, how to disseminate information? Or are you really looking to like level up your gym performance in terms of form, in terms of, being able to push yourself with someone there with you? Those are two very different things. And while we do have very strong biases towards online coaching, I think it really is important to emphasize at the end of this episode, don't go hate on in-person trainers. They are doing a really great job. And there are people out there who really, really, really love it and will never be online coaches. So we did kind of explain how people transition from one to the other towards online. But there are people that just thrive in that in-person environment. They really work well with people one-on-one that way, and they really shouldn't be doing things in any other way. And, I think just knowing that about yourself, if you're a in-person trainer listening to this, we are not trying to bash you. We are just showing the ways that we have seen kind of the downsides for our own personal lives for in-person coaching, why it didn't work for us, and opening up a new avenue for talking about online, because it's a little bit more novel and interesting to a lot of people, I think.
Yeah. And again, like to build off of that, if you are an in-person trainer, or if you were thinking about it, that's not to say that you can't make a decent income off of that, that there are a lot of things that you can do. If you listen to another podcast called Mind Pump, the hosts all talk about their experience. They were all in-person trainers, and they made a decent amount of money. They got really, really good at sales and talking to people. So and like Marissa said at the beginning, or both of us said, if you want to be an online coach, we recommend that you start off in a gym training clients.
Yep.
So, I mean, it's not to say that you shouldn't do, or you should only do one or the other. I think that you should start off in person first, but
yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So that wraps it up. This was a little bit of a long episode, but we hope that you enjoyed this episode. It's a little bit different than what we are normally used to talking about, but if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to our podcast, and maybe share this with someone who is thinking about online or personal training, and share it with someone who is thinking about starting their own business. But if you have any questions, you can find both of us on Instagram. You can find me at Christy Lynn Fit, and Marissa is at Marissa Roy Fitness. Thank you guys so much for listening, and we hope to see you back next week.